Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning. Well, we have an interesting day ahead of us with Donald Trump negotiating a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, but overnight, some accusations flying that Israel claiming that Iran broke the ceasefire, and I don't know what's going to happen. I hope that it holds. I do think that it will hold, but I'm really holding my breath while we're waiting. And some interesting market action. Let's come over and look. Well, where should we start? Well, here's the Treasury. As always, we had a pretty good move up yesterday. Now we did come back quite a bit. Granted, this is not a huge move when you look at like some of the previous moves, but still it's pretty good. And the one of the big things that really moved us though was what's her first name? Michelle Bowman's comments about the next Federal Reserve meeting. And I think these comments are significant, coming in like basically the first chance that she has to talk, basically setting up and saying, I think we should cut next time. So they are definitely some members of firing the warning shot that they want the rate cuts to come. Just in case there was any question or something. Here's the S&P 500. S&P really liked the ceasefire yesterday. And oil coming and basically erasing the entire... Basically erasing the entire jump that we had since the, I guess we're calling it, 6-day war began. So there's still some room to come down. We were way down in the 50s earlier this year, and the supply picture looks like their supply is coming. So you probably missed the best of it, but I think maybe there's still some opportunity to be short some oil. It's not a trade that I'm going to be taking, but I do think that oil is going to move closer to this 50. With some major risks still out there because things could flare up again. I think there's a very high probability of things flaring up again. All right. Gold and silver. Well, gold is giving up some of its gains, and it looks like it lost a little bit yesterday, and it's losing a little bit overnight. Silver holding up a lot better. So silver's still kind of hinting to us that there is something unique going on in silver, some sort of a squeeze unique to silver that is causing it to diverge from gold and hold up better. Here you get copper. A nice little bump / uptrend for once. Although copper still looks awfully random. And then we've got, oh, look at that. The Japanese yen had a really hard turnaround there. With the dollar resuming its slide and coming back down to 97.5. That is actually, so when we were like messing with it yesterday, it was kind of like, the dollar didn't move that much. But yeah, that's big. So now, one of the things I should say on the dollar, one of the narratives that I see a lot is people saying, oh, Donald Trump, he's so great. Look at how much the dollar has fallen under him. And, it's a negative thing. Like, he's destroying our currency. But I think that these people do not remember the market pre-COVID, where basically every day the dollar would go down, and it was the best thing that could happen to your stocks, right? So it really looks like we're going back into a regime like that. However, a lot of people are short the dollar. So there is huge risk of short squeeze in the dollar if something were to happen to really ignite that momentum. It looks like the 6-day war was like kind of not enough. Those guys, they kind of doubled down, and it's looking like that was the right call for them. But the longer this goes on, I can pretty much guarantee you at some point there's going to be some sort of a really massive short squeeze. That's always been the way that it's gone with the dollar, is this short. Stock market really, really loves it. Then a short squeeze comes in the dollar. All right. So, and I already talked about Bowman, didn't I? Yes. So, I think that we just chill here. So far, from the open, the Treasuries, I would say, look relatively quiet. It is a Tuesday. Liquidity looks okay. So I do think we have an opportunity for a move. I think we have an opportunity to try and make a play. I'm not so sure. So I'm trying to think, who would be the players that would come in here today? And I really can't think of any kind of like regular flows that I would be expecting to see. So I don't think that I really have a good predictor of order flow to make a trade off of. Even though it does kind of look like good trading conditions. I suppose, though, we're probably going to continue to get headlines about whether the Israel-Iran ceasefire will hold. So we need to stay locked in for that. Cheaper dollar brings money into U.S. stocks? Yes. Well, really what happens is when the dollar is devaluing, the value of the stocks go up in correlation. So if you were to look at your stocks in terms of gold, for instance, you would probably see that they're not really changing, but your stocks in terms of dollars, they're going up. So, and the stock market does love that, and it does push money into stocks. Then everybody's trying to escape the inflation, and they buy stocks. So it tends to be a good flow for stock market. Yep, and it's good for exports. It's good for exports. Which, and I mean, it seems to me that part of Donald Trump's strategy or goal is to weaken the dollar. That the value of the dollar is too high. He needs the value of the dollar to come down so that we can revitalize the U.S. manufacturing sector. And you know what? I agree with them very strongly on that one. Granted, I don't necessarily think that a ton of jobs are going to come in because of that. Well, not like people working on the manufacturing floor. Because I think that a lot of the manufacturing that comes back to the US is going to be highly mechanized. But like, that's the whole thing, is if we're getting artificial intelligence that allows us to automate more parts of the manufacturing process, then don't we want that to be built here instead of in China? I think we want that to be built here, and that gives us the opportunity to build it here without dramatically increasing the price of things. So it's a good thing to happen, even though it doesn't necessarily solve all the problems, right? Yeah, US doesn't export. Well, since COVID, US exports have been dismal. It's been really disheartening to see the exports, because there was a period, like, here's the thing, is that following 2008, the financial system, it took it a really long time to recover from that, for sure. And it really felt like that just as we were really starting to see great strides, like especially for that lower quintile of Americans, we were really seeing strong gains in income and so forth for that lower portion of Americans. And then COVID hit, so it felt like we were once we were really starting to hit our stride, and then COVID kind of ruined things. U.S. citizens won't like cheaper manufacturing jobs. I don't know if bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. will really create a lot of U.S. jobs. But that's where there's kind of this question about what really is the net impact of AI. Is the net impact of AI that pretty much all labor is worth less? Because if it really does turn into all labor is worth less, then you're basically going to see an impact similar to what we've seen with globalization, where except for the very top Americans, it kind of sucks for everyone. That would not be very fun. Okay. But on the other hand, maybe it doesn't turn out that way. Maybe, for one, people still work and there's just as much demand for labor from humans, but it's just a different type of labor that robots can't do. And I personally think that is the most likely scenario. I think with what the LLMs can do right now, they are very, very error prone. Everybody talking about them replacing coders, I don't see it happening anytime soon because they're just really terrible at certain things. And there are some companies that are kind of going a little bit overboard with the AIs, and they're going to feel it in the future. One of the things I've been thinking about recently with the AIs is that there's not really like overarching strategy to what it does. Unless maybe you, the human that is driving it, gives it that strategy. But even then, it tends to be really disjointed and doesn't always do what I think it should. So I'm constantly having to rein it in and changing what it says and everything. Like it's really good at writing boilerplate, or like I know exactly what I want, and I know that I can type it, but I just don't want to type all of that out. Super great at that. But it's not good at strategy, for instance. And so what you're getting is these people that they take what the LLM said, put it into, like vibe coding. And what you're really doing is you're just creating massive amounts of technical debt. You're not going to make a system that is going to be very robust. What is the word? That has longevity, that you're able to maintain for a really long time and it be performant under load and all of these sorts of things, because it kind of misses that kind of higher level architectural piece, right? So that's where I really don't think that the LLMs are going to completely take over. What's going to happen is it will make writing certain bits of code faster, and that means that the individuals will be faster, but then probably you spend more time waiting on people. So then in that case, you might actually want more people so that the developers spend less time sitting and waiting on somebody else to do something. So in other words, I'm saying there are scenarios where labor demand increases and like that kind of higher, like those really well-paid tech workers that we're going to need even more of them. And I think that's more likely, right? The other thing is you're going to see the price of everything just absolutely crater. So like, yeah, maybe there's less demand for labor, but you don't need to labor as much because things are just so cheap. If the cost of labor basically goes down to zero, that means that everything will be worth like 25 to 50% less. It's really crazy when you start to think about it. Especially when you start to get into, if you could get into like homes, for instance. Yeah. Are Americans trained for high skill manufacturing jobs? They're going to have to build it. It's going to take a long time. They can build it. I really think that the United States has to. I really don't think that they have a choice. So, on this Israel-Iran thing, something that I am seeing a lot of is just people hallucinating. Like everybody has this narrative that's going on in their head about how they view the conflict, especially these people that are super anti-Israel. And anytime that they see something that doesn't completely fit in with their narrative, they start to hallucinate things and information that's not really there. Or they take information and they extrapolate things out of that information that information doesn't really say. And then they start going with those premises, and it just kind of becomes a self-reinforcing thing. So, for instance, this morning, on Reddit, I'm seeing all of the liberals trying to explain away how Donald Trump was able to get a ceasefire, right? Well, they're saying, well, he didn't really do anything because actually he's just under Israel's thumb, right? They have to find some explanation where it's not actually a positive for Donald Trump. So this is a problem if you're trading. This is a big problem if you're trading it, if you're falling into that sort of a trap. And now with the ceasefire and everything is probably one of those places where I think you're going to have be the most tempted to make those sorts of mistakes. So let's be careful while we're waiting to see if the ceasefire holds. Be careful about the trades that you make. So I think this is the stage where I see many traders make the worst trades. Really, the worst trade would have been going short oil as soon as it opened on Sunday, right? that would have been the big mistake. But there's kind of this next mistake, and then after that is when I find tends to be some of the most fertile market opportunities. And what happens is everybody blows their wad on the other stuff, and then they miss the good time. I've done that so many times. Okay. Not really seeing too many of our instruments moving at the moment. Kind of thinking maybe I should do a little bit more casual listening with these new headphones. I don't know if you guys care about if you can hear the music or not. I guess you guys don't really care. Imagine Friday shorts that exited Sunday only for it to go to 68 the next session. Yeah. I tell you, the oil always surprises me. I've had many situations where I had a really good call in oil, and it was just too early or too late. I guess you can never call too late a good trade, but too early definitely. actually think that I can... I think I can listen to something on the web browser here. And you guys won't hear it. Yeah. Watching that 16 in ZF didn't follow the rest of the treasuries. Okay. I'm not seeing a change in the spread, but it kind of looks like ZF was the one that held them back there and the rest of them came with it. And then that time ZF led on the downtick a little bit. Okay. So I'm seeing a little bit of interesting divergence between ZF and the other instruments, but I think that it is just market making right now. Like they did come back into that 09 area in ZN. Oh, I didn't realize Powell is testifying today. And CB Consumer Confidence. So maybe we'll be relatively quiet. I should come over here and check Zero Hedge to see if there's any other stories I missed. He knew we'd attack. Ezra complains at Trump's comments after Iran ceasefire falters. Always wonder how you got a Golda Jolman. I know. Juice? I don't know what you mean by juice. I mean, if we want the serious answer here, I just tell you straight up. It's a combination of an intense interest in the business, being a local to an area that they were building out, and I am a really good computer scientist, software engineer. I'm really good. It's always kind of weird to me to say I'm good at something. It was always like, you're not supposed to say that, right? But the reality is that I can do things and I make decisions and do certain things better that other people don't. That is really rare. And they saw that. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. No, but there's none of... that's funny. I tell you what, there was a lot of Jews at Goldman Sachs in New York. Not in Salt Lake, but in New York there was. And they were always the nicest, most entertaining people that I met there. Of course, it's like, apparently it's like 40 to 60% of white males in New York. So am I not allowed to say that on YouTube? I think I am. You just can't say anything bad about them. I'm telling you, so one of the things that I'm noticing, I don't know if the robots pick up on this, but man, why is it that when I'm seeing people argue about Israel, and as soon as I start to see the Z word come out, it always devolves into anti-Semitism? What's with that? Like, I think it makes sense where you can come in and look at some of the things that have happened around Israel and everything and have differing views on it. And where you could come out with a view that is not entirely positive of Israel. But why is it that the people that go down that route always seem to end up at anti-Semitism? I've never seen a conversation that really kept going like that didn't devolve into anti-Semitism. Is there what is it? I'm wondering, is there something about taking that side of the argument that kind of makes you anti-Semitist? I don't get it. It's kind of a weird thing to me. That's literally the point of propaganda, isn't it? I experienced the same thing in person with a close Jew friend. It's because since this thing has started, I have just seen some of the most disgusting comments on Reddit in particular. So they're making a new dig, and there's actually an iPhone app. So I can't try it because I'm on Android, but apparently they have like a beta version going with iPhone, and I just can't wait. I want off Reddit so badly. You know, knowing the way that things go, probably Dig ends up being just as bad. But Reddit has just become such a cesspool. Like, I just see some of the craziest, most unhinged left-wing behavior over there. It's like, and it wasn't always like this, but it's like they kicked all of the conservatives off of this platform, and now they feel like they can be themselves. And it's disgusting. Must be a built-in behavior, all I can say. It doesn't matter why I say he is always on the defense. Well, one of the things that I think happens with this conversation, though, is that we in America kind of forget that the Jews were a very, very repressed minority. See, because our idea in the United States of a minority is you're an underprivileged group, and then that keeps you down. And then you're down for generations and generations and generations. But that's not really what happened with the Jews. The Jews were the rich people. They were the bankers. They made money, and they were hated because they made money. They were pretty much systemically, repressed and dismantled and like attempted genocide against them. So they had to start completely from ground zero. And within a generation, they had completely built themselves back up. So because they've done well, we don't think of them as a repressed minority. But the reality is that they are, and they're very sensitive to it. They are very sensitive to the being attacked again. And I think that I kind of identify with them a little bit because it's the same thing with Mormons. That Mormons have been a repressed minority in this country. We've done well for ourselves, but we're all sitting over here in Utah knowing the day probably comes where everybody turns against us and we're going to be discriminated against, if not killed. And I think we're defensive about it. And so I think I understand how Jews feel when it comes to those sorts of things. You can be a repressed minority and still be responsible for a whole lot of power. Or well, I guess one of the takeaways here that I think kind of contradicts some people's narratives is that you can go from a repressed minority to a really, really successful people in a generation. People are really amazing. And they can do really amazing things when they put their minds to it. And a lot of it is just kind of having the right kind of strategy and all of that sort of stuff. Is repression a power thing, a wealth thing, or a people have to like me thing? I think so. I think when I'm using it in regards to Mormons, I think it's more a power thing. Like when I'm saying that Mormons were repressed, I mean like it was legal to kill Mormons in Missouri until 1970 or something. Like it's just, you know, like they were actively out killing people. That's what I mean by repressed. And that's what I mean by repressed for the Jews is basically everywhere that they went. They were in Russia. Haven't you ever watched Fiddler on the Roof? Right? They just got kicked out of everywhere. There was gross abuses of power against them. That's what I mean by repressed. I don't know what you mean by, yeah, to bank on a repressed minority having a shitload of power. Why were the Mormons repressed? Is that the question? Or why were the Jews repressed? Or why something else? Oh, why were Jews kicked out of so many countries? Well, I know that in Europe, it was really a class thing, is my understanding of it. Is that they were bankers. Nobody likes banking. And so that was kind of how they got the bad rap. In Russia and some of these other places, I think that it starts to get too complicated to really give like one key underlying reason, you know? I think you're kind of hinting at that, well, they got kicked out of so many countries because they didn't like what the Jews were doing, but I don't think that that's completely true. So why did you take Palestine? They didn't. They came in and they legally bought land. And then after acquiring enough land legally, they decided to declare their independence. They didn't steal anything. Well, until there was a war, and then they took territory in a war, and then it gets complicated. But answer the the question, honestly, without the ability to see it from the repressor's side. Well, so like with the Mormons, it seems to me that you know, you had a large number of people flooding into an area that all kind of have similar beliefs and are gonna all vote the same way, and they didn't like that. So that was one of the key things that kind of pitted them against the local people. On top of the, well, they had beliefs that differed from mainstream Christianity considerably. Lending money on interest is the problem? It's really crazy to me that it's like you can lend people money, but you can't charge interest between Jews, and that allows them to be good bankers. But whatever. Like this is one of those things that I find really, really interesting and kind of telling about how money works. Is that like Christianity? Like straight up Christianity has prohibitions against charging interest, and we ignore it, because basically what happened was people started charging interest anyways, and we found out that actually this is a way that makes the system work and it makes us more prosperous, so they went towards it. And you're seeing the same thing in other cultures, like the Muslim world is kind of against charging interest, and so they have to balance it out some other way by charging you a bunch up front instead. Right? So it's like interest is a necessary part of a vibrant economy, and having interest and having borrowing increases growth, as much as we all hate it. But it always comes back to this complexity thing, right? Where it's like, individual interactions that you might like or might not like can end up creating higher level behaviors that are actually beneficial, or the opposite, you know. And there's kind of like no rhyme or reason to it either. It's hard to predict. What is Mormonism and what do they believe in? Okay, Mormons is basically an offshoot of Christianity that believes that Jesus Christ and God are two separate physical individuals, and that these two separate physical individuals visited a boy in like 1870 and told them that Christ's true church had basically fallen apart after Jesus, and that he was to restore that church. So basically Mormons believe that there are modern day prophets and there is modern day scripture, and they claim that, or we claim that we've received further light and knowledge, revelation, things to explain things that aren't really explained very well in the Bible and so forth. So there's, so for instance, Mormons don't believe in the concept of like a Christian hell, at least not the hell that everybody gets from Dante's Inferno. Mormons kind of believe that basically everybody goes to heaven, but that there's different degrees of heaven. That's one of the major differences. The big difference, the one that Christians will care about, though, is that most Christians, at least, believe in the Trinity, or what's the name of the Nicene Creed or something, where they're basically saying that God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit are all the same entity. They're just like different manifestations of the same entity. And Mormons don't believe that. Mormons believe that they are separate individuals. No, Mormons do believe in the Holy Spirit, but they believe that he is a third individual. Okay, so we're getting some comments from a Fed speaker essentially saying that Fed policy could be on pause for quite some time. That's Hammock. So that's why the treasuries are selling off a little bit. I don't think that his opinion will matter as much as Bowman. Bowman is a more influential member, but his comments are also not as I don't know how to say this. Like Bowman was really like going into detail, and Hammock doesn't seem as decisive just from the initial comments, but that could just be me hallucinating something. The Holy Trinity is also in the CIA gateway process. I think those things are so funny that, like, because the CIA dabbled in crazy things back a couple of decades ago, everybody goes, oh, that must mean that it's true, and it works. I mean, maybe if we had evidence that they're still doing it, but I don't think we do. I think that they were just crazy experiments that they stopped because they didn't actually work. Especially the remote viewing thing. Oh my gosh. I hear people say this. I tell you what, you want to get into the crazies, right? That's like the gateway is aliens, right? And there's been some interesting UFO sightings. There's definitely a story to be had there. I don't know if it's aliens. There's a good chance that it's aliens, but I don't know. I don't think that it actually is. Something weird going on there, right? But then these people, they latch onto that, and then they hear one piece of information, they say that they just immediately accept as true, and it's just kind of like you pull out enough of those things and you just kind of create your own whole thing. And the UFO community is very, very much into that CIA stuff and remote viewing. And so then you get these people on social media that just straight up claim that they're like channeling alien spirits and things like that, or that they're a remote viewer. And then they just spew complete nonsense because they're really, it's just a hoax. And then again, these people, they latch onto those things, and they're just constantly building this little mythology around itself. So crazy. Let's see here. I didn't see your earlier clip. The D, I forgot to click on that. Or was that the one that... Oh, okay, you're giving me the same thing. Okay, I'm not quite sure what Joe Biden is talking about in that clip, to be honest with you. But how big is your monitor? They're 8-inch monitors. Oh, are you talking about the screens? The screens are 27-inch displays. I don't like to use the term monitor for my displays, because to me, monitor means speakers. The bass on these headphones is really good. I have to say, It's not as accurate as these. The thing with these is if you've got like a really long sweep or sometimes there are certain like tail ends that end up getting cut off and it's very, very accurate. But these ones, it's just really impactful. Like when they kick, and are you spending too much time with the order flow or mainly the DOM? Well, I kind of view, to me, order flow just means looking at all of the orders, right? So I'm always looking at all of the orders. Oh, by the way, we never turned on our algo. That's something we should probably be doing. But there's a bunch of different things that I'm constantly looking at, so... You know, the thing with the DOM is that the signals that you get on the DOM are very, very short-lived. And a lot of it is you taking all of those tiny little short-lived signals and kind of telling a story to you and giving you a read. And then putting that story that it's giving you in context with the larger flows that you're expecting. So, you know, I'm trying to create like a full system, and I think that people look at it as like, oh, there's this one strategy where I use this indicator, and there's this one strategy where I look for this one pattern, and I don't view it like that. Because generally speaking, the patterns that we see on intraday trading mean absolutely nothing. To me, it's more, there is an underlying condition that is there, whether we know what it is or not. People that are going to come in and buy or sell in the future. And our job is to kind of suss out what that flow is actually going to be. And all of these things that we're looking at are just tiny little tea leaves that can give us a hint to what that is. And if we can figure that out early enough before the flow comes, then we make money. It's kind of, I guess it's a conscious effort to get away from signal-based trading, because ultimately I believe that signal-based trading on intraday timeframes is not effective unless you're a robot. Well, those comments from the Fed speaker definitely did push us down, and we did make a new low. We'll see if it's got legs or not. There's an iceberg at 05 going on right now. There wasn't any oil in the Middle East, likely all these folks would all get along. Oh, I don't know about that, man. I think that there are some fundamental cultural things, and there's some history involved in it. You know, have you ever watched Lawrence of Arabia, and when they take over this city, immediately the different tribes all start fighting with each other? I think the reality is that this, like, getting along with everybody and being, you know, liking to meet new people and to interact with people not of your own tribe is not a natural thing to humans. For the most of human history, you didn't do that. And it was only until recent human history that started to prove to be a really valuable trait because of commerce. And so I think that it's going to be a long time that you will always see conflicts between different groups, often over things that seem really trivial to us. Because we have kind of developed those traits in that culture, and other cultures haven't. Who's fighting over oil, though? The U.S. doesn't need it, so that trope is kind of tired. Well, yeah, I mean, they were fighting in the Middle East long before they knew what oil was. Yeah. Goes back to this thing that we were talking about yesterday. Is war just kind of a fundamental aspect of humans? Because I kind of think that to some extent it is. It kind of seems to me that organized war is one of the things that differentiate humans from other animals. And if we're looking at it from a evolutionary perspective, I think that has significantly impacted our gene pool. People will fight for literally anything. Why would a caveman and after have fought, made their little wars? They didn't have oil, barely religion. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing that's kind of weird and funny about it, though, is that almost all wars actually end up being fought over resources, but in the minds of the people actually fighting, it's other things. Any country that doesn't have resources also always has its issues. There's always going to be issues, yeah. Like really, I think that the period of peace because I think one of the ideas that we have in the West is that, well, we have become our society has evolved beyond those things, and that's why we are so civilized and we don't have wars as much and all of those sorts of things. I don't think that that's it at all. I think that the reason we have lived in a period of relative peace and prosperity is because all of the economic incentives have been towards peace. And as soon as you get a situation where there's a possible economic situation or incentive not to have peace, you have wars. And what happens is we've just gotten really good at keeping them contained. That's my view on it. I don't think that we are really all that fundamentally different from humans thousands of years ago. like, yeah, there are definitely like changes in the gene pool and perhaps in certain kind of mental traits like openness and things like that. But those are tiny little changes. Ultimately, we're just as capable of, and they were just as capable of doing things as we are. You know, they just didn't have the technology yet. And it appears from some evidence that we're starting to get that humans have been that capable for tens of thousands of years. Well, I was looking to see, I didn't quite hear what my news squawk was saying, but I think that they were just talking about the open. But we did move back up here to 08, so I don't know. Okay, let's recenter it here. Do you guys think that the ceasefire is going to hold? Like, it sound, you know, all of the headlines were kind of making it seem like it was falling apart, but I haven't heard anything, and I'm kind of thinking, well, yeah, there was a little trip up, but in the end it will hold. And that wouldn't be the first time I've seen a situation where like there was a ceasefire, and then like as soon as it happened, both sides are complaining that somebody's broken it, but then they do end up holding the ceasefire. So Nick Timuro says U.S. home prices fell 0.4% on a seasonally adjusted basis in April. The 12-month change in home price growth slowed to 2.7% from 3.4% in March. Metros that saw the biggest pandemic run-ups are seeing the larger price drops, such as Dallas and Tampa. Iran president says he will respect ceasefire if Israel does. Ceasefire logistics may be hard to get across the entire field fast. I believe it doesn't make it an excuse, but I wonder if that's what it truly is. One small unit just not hearing the news fast enough. Maybe. I mean, the thing is that they said that Iran fired a missile and it actually hit and killed some people in Israel. So I don't know about that one. Because the thing that I think is kind of weird about the stories that I read this morning was like, okay, Iran was firing all of these missiles and basically Israel came out mostly unscathed. And then after the ceasefire, one sole missile comes through and kills 5 people? What? Okay. But I'm trying to remember where I learned this lesson. Was it because of a ceasefire with Russia and Ukraine? Was it a previous ceasefire in Israel? I can't say, but I very distinctly remember on multiple occasions the market responding to a ceasefire and there being some like false starts where like, you know, my initial thought from seeing the headline was, oh, it's all going to flare back up again. I guess I better buy treasuries or whatever. And then it ended up being, you know, everybody forgot about it. So I guess I would say that based on my previous experience, I am erring on the side that the ceasefire will hold, despite some little kerfluffles here and there. This again, I think part of the reason why I'm emphasizing this point so much is this comes back again to a lot of what I'm seeing, where people have certain narratives in their head and they start hallucinating and or really changing which information they're focusing on to try and keep that narrative alive in their head. So a lot of the people that are anti-Trump, you're seeing a lot of posts on Reddit this morning about the ceasefire being violated. And if the ceasefire ends up holding, even though there was some isolated incidents, if the ceasefire ends up holding in the long run, then those people that posted that stuff, 6 months from now, it's going to look really silly, isn't it? So there's a real art to how do you keep yourself centered on the information that is going to really matter to the market. Well, the Treasury, they came up a decent amount. They've already pulled back 3 or 4 ticks. So already doing some things that kind of catch me off guard. Thank goodness I didn't buy the dollar yesterday. Well, it took a pretty big hit overnight, didn't it? That's the hard thing with these sorts of things is I really think that in the next year or two, I'm going to put the time frame 2 years. In the next 2 years, you will see a massive short covering rally in the dollar. But I can't predict exactly when it's going to happen. Like the issue with that trade is you can't time it. So I'll talk about it. I see it. I'm watching for it, but it's probably not a trade I'm actually going to take, USO not do good? No, I didn't mention USO. One of the best trades I caught was in USO, by the way. I had some calls. I was long oil. I had some calls. Made $1,000 or so on the calls. If I had picked a month further out, I would have caught Russia invading Ukraine, and then it probably would have been like a $10,000 trade, but oh well. Should listen to that. Okay. Or just that I've been listening to music here to try and get myself see how I feel about these headphones. And I haven't listened to any Subtronics with them, so I should listen to some Subtronics, because that's kind of some of the wildest and crazy stuff. That's interesting. GitHub CEO says manual coding remains key despite AI boom. Top comment says if CEOs say AI is good, they lie for marketing and stock prices. If CEO says AI is bad, they lie for marketing and stock prices. And the funny thing is, this view is kind of true. I wonder if Powell is going to respond to Trump's banter about him. Probably not. Like they're going to ask him about it, and he's going to give another one of those really tort, angry non-responses, I think. I don't know. The thing that I find frustrating about this issue in particular is that everything goes into hyperbole, right? Like Donald Trump instantly goes into hyperbole about these things. I think that there is a very good argument against the current Fed policy. I think there's a very good argument that the Fed should be getting ahead of this a little bit and that they should have started cutting earlier. Like, I think that they could have cut in June. I really hope that they cut in July. I'll be very disappointed if they don't cut in July. Because what I see is certain sectors of the economy are really struggling, and there's going to be a certain point at which those guys just can't keep their head above water anymore, and they're just going to give in. And you start to get this self-reinforcing cycle where like people get laid off, so they pull back on spending, and then that causes other people to get laid off, and that's how you get recessions. And by the time, it seems to me that by the time the Fed realizes that that's what's happening, it will be too late. And I think that given everything that we've had happen this year with tariffs and everything, I think that situation is extremely likely to happen. And meanwhile, this scenario that they seem to be concerned about, wherein tariffs lead to significantly higher inflation, I don't think is nearly as likely or as big of a deal as they think it is. So I think there's a very, very good argument against the current Fed policy. But like Donald Trump has to turn it into, we should immediately be cutting 2.5 percentage points, like, okay. You need a new TV. Any ideas? Get an OLED. So this year they made the big thing in TVs is they have OLEDs that are in larger sizes. And when you go and you see the larger sizes of OLED TVs, you can be blown away. You go to the store and look at them and you'll be like, oh, that's what I'm getting. I'm getting a 105 inch. They're amazing. Not fall for ULED or Samsung QLED. If you don't already know, look up the differences. OLED always wins, yeah. The OLED is better. Yes. If you go to the store and you can look at them side by side, you can definitely see the differences in everything. There are things that, like, after you get the TV, you're probably never going to think about.
Block cell.
Although I do, honestly, with my OLED, because I watch a lot of music videos with the kids on the TV. And so I'm watching a lot of videos that have like flashes and black and white and things like that. And on the OLED, it's crazy. Man, today's session has gone by quickly. It's almost time for us to go. We only got 15 minutes left. I feel like it's been tight, but we did get some interesting moves in Treasuries today. Not anything that I really could have predicted, but we did get some movement. It was a decent Tuesday. For summer, decent Tuesday, yeah. Ooh, I felt the AC turn on. Yeah, the Powell testimony in 10 minutes is going to be interesting. I think you're probably going to get a good move out of the market off of what he says, but I can't guess what he's going to say. Maybe he'll come out and just be really incredibly hawkish. He'd be like, well, I really strongly oppose any kind of an interest rate cut in July already. Bowman doesn't know what she's talking about. Can you imagine? That'd be... Here's a comment on r/stock market. The US dollar index has dropped nearly 10% in 6 months, so why is nobody talking about it? One, because the dollar dropping that much is only coming after a pretty significant rise in the 6 months prior. And B, because the dollar index dropping is a good thing. For markets and investors, at least, it tends to be a good thing. Not saying that's right or that's the way it should be or if it's the good or... Well, I'm just saying, like, I shouldn't say it's a good or a bad thing for the dollar index to fall, but for markets, it tends to result in inflows into markets. And if it's something that's good, they don't talk about it, right? Because they don't want you to catch on and make some money off of it too. They only want to talk about it when things are bad so that you get scared and panic sell into them. Sent you the gamma walls? We're holding the zone currently. But what does that actually mean there? Does that mean that if we go below that, that the market maker's gamma exposure increases? Because that's a little bit concerning. If Powell comes in and says something hawkish and pushes us across that line, and then the market makers have to sell extra as it goes down, that would be a problem. He says, yes, that would be a problem. Well, I'm not the one to make bets like this, but I think that if I was going to bet on Powell moving the market, it would be in a hawkish direction. So if that's down there, maybe it is worth it taking a short here. But I really don't know what he's going to say. And even though we think that we know what he's thinking, I think that we don't really. He's hard to predict what he's going to say. All right, well, guys, I should probably get going. But it was a good session. I'm enjoying these headphones. Not amazing. There's these headphones. These other ones. These are like special. These ones are kind of okay. But I think I'm gonna stick with these ones. I think that they fit what I need better. So I will see you guys tomorrow. We'll still be in Discord. In the meantime, stay excellent, team.